Hello and welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about all the books that I read in March. So, when you watch videos like this on YouTube, most of the people are reading like 12 plus books a month. One of the women I watch read 23 or something. And so it makes this video feel less important, which is not true, obviously. But I read 3 books in March, and that's pretty good for me. That's more than average for me. I'll typically do around 2. Not as impressive as 23, but I had a pretty diverse reading month in terms of genre. So, the first book I read was Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is a classic. It's gothic fiction. And then I read, this one's kind of interesting. So I've been trying to read more nonfiction this year. This is a children's, it's definitely geared towards children's. This is a world history, I guess it's a textbook. It's definitely marketed for children. It's the complete middle school study guide. Everything you need to ace world history in one big fat notebook. So it's actually really cute. It's like supposed to be notes borrowed from the smartest kid in class and double checked by an award-winning teacher. So it's supposed to be like if you were to have taken really cute, well done, thorough notes in your middle school history class. So it's really colorful, a lot of pictures. So I read a textbook, basically. And then the final book I read in March was Hide. And this is a suspense thriller. So going a little bit more in depth about each of these books, we'll start with Wuthering Heights since it was the first book I read. This book is wild. If you've read a lot of classics and you're familiar with like the type of societal norms and that sort of like old-fashioned society norms, like it's definitely that, but like it's taken to a different extreme. This book is crazy. At first I was a little bit confused about the perspective. There were so many characters introduced right away that it got confusing because the perspective of the whole book is a man named Mr. Lockwood during a snowstorm has to spend the night at like his neighbor's house who he's never really been to before, and he's really confused about the people that are living there and the master of the house. Like he's really confused about their past. And so basically he just goes home and asks one of his housemaid servants who used to work there about the tea, the gossip. He's just like, hey, tell me, what do you know about the people up there? And she's like, oh, let me tell you, because she used to work for that family. So the whole book is just her retelling of that family's history. And oh boy, is their history crazy and wild. That being the perspective, the story that gets told is originally centered around a family whose father comes home and brings a boy he just adopted. And the boy is dirty and unruly, not disciplined, and it kind of puts a divide in the family. The father starts to love him more than his own son, but the mother and obviously the brother don't like him at all. And then eventually, his name is Heathcliff, and when Heathcliff grows up, him and the daughter, Kathy, fall in love with each other. But Kathy, knowing she's in love with Heathcliff, knowingly decides to marry Edgar, a neighbor boy, another family. She knows she's in love with Heathcliff, but she marries Edgar because I guess she thinks it would be smarter politically, financially, whatever. Like she just thinks it's a more accepted marriage. And so it's followed around Heathcliff's revenge because he's unhappy that he's not with Kathy. So Kathy marries Edgar. Heathcliff, for revenge, marries Edgar's brother, Isabel, and literally just abuses her. And everyone, he's just terrible. He's just a wicked, evil man. And so that is what this is mainly about. I found it entertaining, mostly just because of how shocking it was. Some of the statements and actions and decisions were just like really out of pocket. So that was Wuthering Heights. And now the next book I read, we'll briefly talk about this textbook that I read because it's world history. So there's not like a main plot. It makes it more interesting. When I was in school, specifically middle school, which is what this is the target for, I was never into history and wasn't really good at it. I'm never good at like remembering specific dates and names and all that. So I was never really good at it. But since this is formatted and directed towards kids, this made it more interesting and more digestible because it's just an overview, right? Like, it can't go too in depth because this would be a million bajillion pages, because it covers everything from like prehistoric man up until like 2005. So it has to be pretty big picture, and that makes it more digestible. So I thought this was actually really fun. I find it kind of hilarious that I read this textbook cover to cover. So not very exciting to talk about, but I thought it was good. And interesting, and I feel like it's just something nice to have on your shelf. And then finally, the last book I read in March was Hyde. This book I'd heard about several months ago, and I heard some skeptical reviews of it, but I was interested in the plot of it. And I would say that the start is not great. Basically, the plot of Hyde is 14 people join this competition, this hide and seek competition, to try and win a lot of money. And that is taking place in an old, abandoned, unused amusement park. And so the beginning is a lot of character introduction. You're meeting 14 contestants, and they're all different people. And of course they're all different people, but why I say it like that is each character was such a huge stereotype. Like, they were all, this is the pretty rich girl, this is the hot dude, this is the misunderstood poor girl. They were all so an annoyingly copy and pasted stereotype of some sort of personality. And I just find that like such like an eye roll thing to read when a character says something or is described in a certain way that is just so cookie cutter. It's like, really? And I just find it weak writing. Anybody could have written those characters. Anybody. I could have written those characters. Your next door 10-year-old annoying neighbor could have written them. The characters were not impressive at all in the slightest. So the introduction of all of these people and some of the dialogues and thought processes of these people was obnoxious. Once the game started, I honestly was riveted, okay? I just was a huge fan of the setting. The abandoned amusement park is just, I really enjoyed that atmosphere. And it's such a slow building suspense because this is a suspense thriller. So obviously something goes wrong, or there's just this really gradual, slow build realization of, crap, this isn't a game and we don't know what is seeking us. So I found that suspense and that the thrill of it to be really good and really successful. I really enjoyed that. And then the ending went back to being weak for me. The explanations and the climax of it was just, I just don't think it was that well done. And I also feel like the ending was the author going, well, I can't really think of a logical way to end this, so we're just gonna say F it and end it. It's just gonna be like, oh well, I don't care, and it ends. And that was a weak ending in my opinion. But I was riveted through the whole middle part. And even though the characters were stupid stereotypes, there was actually a moment where I felt sad. Despite the majority of the characters being really annoying, there was one character who, well, actually two of the characters really did pull on my heartstrings. So this definitely had its moments. There was a couple scenes where I was like, oh my goodness, I'm actually like getting emotional over this. Great atmosphere and great suspense, in my opinion. So those are the 3 books that I read in March. So far this year, my reading's been going really well. I've read 13 books for this year. Looking forward, what am I going to be reading for April? This book I keep talking about in all my videos here, but I have yet to get around to it. It's still on my TBR, but I have acquired another book recently, which is very nondescript black cover, but it is called Captain Blood. I don't know exactly what this book is about. Clearly, I don't have a summary sleeve to read, but what I've read on Google is that it's an adventure story about a good man turned into a pirate by mistreatment from the king at the time and being thrown into slavery, but he's like trying to keep his honor and he's still a gentleman even though he's a pirate. This is another recommendation to me on the premise of, oh, I love Three Musketeers. I would like Captain Blood. So this was given to me as a recommendation because of the Three Musketeers. So I plan on getting to that this month as well. I'm also contemplating when I should do my reread of the Three Musketeers because there's so many other things I need to read, but like I also need to read this again. Priorities. But yeah, that's gonna do it. Just a quick update on how my March reading went and a little look into my future reading plans. If you have any thoughts about the books I read or have any recommendations for me, I would love to hear it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Subscribe for more book content, and I'll see you in the next one.